Today we're going to continue our visit with Tico Duckett from Duckett Brothers Distributing. And we're just glad that you've joined in because we have some great tips for you as leaders that you can put to use right away. And so thank you again, Tico, for being here and being a part of this great opportunity for us to learn together.
Thanks for having me. I hope I have some wisdom for some young entrepreneur. I tend to want to focus sometimes on letting younger entrepreneurs see me and see that it's possible to run a business, and especially being minority business. Yeah. I didn't really understand minority business to the fullest until I opened my business and then went to Detroit and saw some of the forums and the minority businesses down there and actually met some of the minority business guys and ladies that were doing millions in revenue. And I just didn't think it was even possible. Right. So once I saw that it was possible, I came back to Lansing and said I could do this, and I did. And so I think I feel I need to do that for other young entrepreneurs to see that it's possible, and especially being a minority business, you just don't see a lot of them, and just because of the nature of the business, you just don't see a lot. But I like to show people that there's opportunity, and you have to stick with it. Is it easy? Heck no, not at all. Yeah. But you have to present yourself. You have to have something that people want, and you have to promote it.
Yeah. I think that's a really great point that you just made in terms of you went out and engaged with other people in the community. And I find sometimes, I'm curious if you maybe felt at times like, okay, we've opened our business, we've got our website, we've got the sign on the building or whatever it might be, and people will just find us.
Well, that's a terrible concept because that's not true. I never really looked at it like that. I looked at it where you have to go out and network. And you have to plant seeds, and you have to show people, you might have met them 1 year, but then 2-3 years later, you're still in business, and you're still, so people kind of tend to want to do business with people who are going to be in business for a while, and you can't just start off with, tons of business. It just doesn't work that way. Right. But you do have to take the time to plant the seeds and to build relationships and the trust for people to want to do business with you.
Yeah. Talk a little bit more, if you would, about that. When you think about building relationships, I always think about relationships in two ways. One is relationships with your clients or with people in the community that you want to do business with, but also relationships within your own organization and your own team. And I'm wondering if you could talk about that, because leadership, that's such a key component, is the ability to really relate well to people.
Absolutely. Well, again, going back to my athletic background, I used to watch coaches. And I used to watch how they treated people. And Coach Perlis, one of my coaches, said, you don't treat everyone equal, but you treat them fair. And that's pretty much how it is in business. Some people, you might have to raise your voice a little bit, Some people, you just might have to look at them and they know what you need. And some people you have to kind of teach and hold. And that's how, the coaches did athletes. Yeah. And so that's the same in business. And then once you have your staff, you figure out who's the leader, who's going to be the office manager, who's going to be the supervisor. You pretty much find what skills people have, and then you basically mold them into a leader. And I think that's what good leaders do. You can't lead everybody all the time. You have to put the power back into your leadership team and trust that they know what you want and what you're thinking. And so everyone is kind of bought in on the culture of the business. And that's kind of how I look at leadership.
Yeah. talk, if you would, about culture
Mhm.
and how you've kind of built that. I love on your website, I had a chance to look at that, and you talk about some of the things that are important to you. And so I'm curious how you've been able to communicate that to your
Sure.
team and ensure that that carries out, especially now that you have 100+
Sure.
people.
Well, again, I always tell people, families first.
Mm.
If someone doesn't get their case of toilet paper, it's okay. You know, it's okay. I mean, we're still gonna live. If something in cleaning didn't get done, it's okay. And the culture is just basically, you know, leadership as far as your family, your work, and then community. That's pretty much how I live. And you know, family's always first in my culture. You know, people, if something's going on with your kids or your spouse or a relative, go, you know, do what you have to do, we'll you know, and come back. And one of the things in my culture and in my business is I'm not a micromanager. And quite frankly, people who need to be micromanaged don't survive in our culture. So, and believe it or not, there's a lot of people that need to be micromanaged. They need to be, this is what you do on this minute and that day, and that's just not our culture. We pretty much make sure that things are done from the beginning to the end, and if there's a problem with that concept, then now we have an issue. We do the work, we bill, you pay, and it's just a repetitive cycle, and if something disrupts that, then now there's a problem. But I'm not the one to say, you know, you need to work 8 hours straight, 8 hours a day. Well, there's times where you might get your work done, you know, and need a break, and that's fine with me, you know. So, and again, with our culture, they see me, how I'm working, and my work ethic, and hopefully, you know, they see that, and you know, I try to lead by example. I'm not a big rah guy. I just try to lead by example, and hopefully people watch and they learn and they do their jobs correctly.
Yeah, that is great. Are there maybe a couple things in particular that you hope people would learn from watching you or watching other leaders in your company that you feel are really important takeaways?
I think really the number one takeaway is if you've built a leadership team, you have to let them lead. Period. You can't build a leadership team and you're still leading it. You have to trust that, you know, we've talked, we've had meetings, we know what the outcome needs to be. Lead it. There's too many leaders that don't let it go. They have a leadership team, they have people in place, but it always ends up on the leader, the owner of the company, and then you turn into a bottleneck. Because everything comes back to you, and then things may not happen the way they should because it comes back to you, which it shouldn't. It should roll downhill and get done properly. But that's the biggest thing I think is letting your leadership team lead. And if you don't, then you really don't have a leadership team.
Great advice.
Yeah.
Great advice. I'm curious if you were to meet, let's say, someone who's just starting that leadership journey.
Sure.
And you were going to give them maybe one or two pieces of advice, maybe things that you've learned along the way that you wish you had known at the beginning. What would it be?
Well, that's a great question. That was a really good question because there's so many components. I would say the one thing that person needs to keep in mind is, and this is what I tell my staff, is pretend we're on a rowboat and I'm in the front with my vision goggles and I'm trying to tell us where we're going. So basically you have the vision and everyone else behind you who's rowing is trying to help you fulfill that vision. And so that's what I would tell someone starting out. You have to have your goals, what you need to accomplish, and everyone else needs to buy in and help you get there. That's what I would tell a young leader. You know what you want. You know what you want personally, but everyone else doesn't. And then you have to let them know what you want, and then it has to be a buy-in. As far as this is our goal, we want to be the best in the country, or number one in the Midwest,
Right.
or, create, 5 million in revenue. They have to know these goals so they can help you get there.
Yeah.
So don't keep it all inside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great advice, I believe, because so often we also think we have to solve everything ourselves.
Right. That is true. And sometimes you do think that. and again, you have to, if you want to grow and flourish, you have to let people do their job and not be that person who has to solve anything. Because the one thing that happened with me, 4 years ago, I had a hip replacement, and I was working a lot. I was working. And when I had the hip replacement, I started to write down everything that I was doing, and then I gave it, to people in my organization. Then when I came back from hip surgery, I didn't take it back. And literally, I found myself lost. I was like, what's going on? And so I was talking to some of my friends, and they said, Tico, you finally made it. I said, made it to what? You're not working in your business. Now you can work on your business. And the light came on. I'm like, wow, okay. I didn't realize that was what was happening. And that's part of what propelled me to come to the west side of the state, because I didn't have to work in the business. People are in place. So now work on the business. And then that's when it was like, let's go to the west side. And we joined the Grand Rapids Chamber. We joined the Econ Club and some other organizations in town. And that's what I'm doing. Now I'm working on the business instead of in the business.
That's great.
Yeah, and I didn't know. I've always thought that as a business owner, you just work hard all the time. And it's true, but then you become an operator. You're just operating your business, and there's no growth, and so that happened to me. I finally got to that point where I got my head out of the weeds, so to say, and started visioning growth again. Yeah.
That's great. We really are just so grateful you've shared a lot of great things that I know the people who are listening are going to find so valuable as they're thinking about their business, as they're thinking about their teams that they're leading. As we've talked about, it's a continuing journey, and that's why every month we have these segments to really help us to continue to think fresh thoughts and really get inspired about how we could do things differently and better.
Absolutely.
For our teams. I'm wondering if people were interested in getting in touch with you, what would be some of the best way for them to find out more?
You could easily go to our website, DuckettBrothers.com, and there's, you could message us. Also, I have an email address, tduckett@DuckettBrothers.com. You can get a hold of me those ways, and we can talk business, we can talk shop, we can talk family. I have a family, five children.
One.
I don't know how much time we have, but I was married, a first marriage, had a daughter, Jackie. She's getting her PhD at Wayne State right now in geriatrics, psychology. And then I got remarried, and my wife wanted a child. And I was like, oh, I was like, I had one, but then it was like, okay, let's have a child. So biologically we couldn't, and then so we ended up fostering to adopt, and we got a call that 2-year-old twins were dropped off at Sparrow, and at first I'm like, oh, I don't want 2-year-old twins. Are you kidding me? Then by the end of the day, it was kind of like, you can't pick and choose. These kids need a home, and kids need a home, and so we, at the end of the day, brought the twins home, and then about 8 months later, found out they had a baby sister across town, and I was like, she's gonna stay across town, Then of course you have to bring them in. You have to bring the kids in with their brother and sister, and then about a year after that, we were going to court to take the rights from the mom so we could fully adopt the 3, and she walks in pregnant. And my wife goes, "We're gonna have a baby," and I was just like, "No, we're not." Like, no, we're not. And of course, 2 days after Jaden was born, we had a newborn. So I had basically 4 kids really fast, and I think it was one of the best things ever. And I say that because people will say, "Tico, you saved these kids' life. You're giving them a better opportunity, you know, all this stuff," and I get that. But at that time in my life, I didn't really have good health. You know, I was overweight. I really wasn't working out. And I started doing the math as the little one. Okay, I gotta see him graduate from high school. I gotta see him graduate college, you know, all this stuff. So so literally they saved my life. I lost 40 pounds. I started working out again, eating right. I just started doing things that will help me live longer.
Yeah.
And so that's the blessing that they brought to me, as well as watching these kids grow and, you know, and just be great human beings. And I just love watching that.
Well, thanks for sharing that part of your life as
Sure.
well, because every part of our life makes us more effective as a leader, I think, and so it's about that continued growth.
Sure.
It's that continued learning, and sometimes, as you said, sometimes it's those challenges that help us learn the most.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
you have to learn from those experiences.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you so much for being our guest, and we'll look forward to joining with our listeners again next month for our next episode of Leadership Bits and Bytes.